Whereas if you have all the tools, all the algorithms, all the capabilities, but you can't be there in the moment and really listen and follow the person you're interviewing or observing and tune into their world for half an hour, guess what happens? You just sit there for half an hour, but you simply weren't there. Somebody was talking to you, but you were not actually listening. So no matter what they do, no matter what their behaviors are, no matter what they're struggling with, you've come in and left, but nothing changed.
What we seek shapes what we build. This is If You Seek by Useberry. Hello, everybody. This is Nicole Fotaki. Welcome back to If You Seek. Today, we're joined with Eleni Lialiamou, founder of Kimolian Academy. Eleni has built something truly meaningful, not just a place to level up skills, but a space for transformation. Her approach to product education is rooted in timeless wisdom, the idea that learning should spark curiosity, not just fill a jar. What makes her work stand out is how she's turned her own experience in product management into a platform for helping others grow in mindset, not just in capability. In today's conversation, we'll explore the power of mindset, how the right tools can unlock new ways of thinking, and what it takes to move from idea to impact. Eleni, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you for having me today. It's an absolute honor to be part of the podcast, and I'm looking forward to a discussion.
Let's start with something foundational to your work, the mindset behind product thinking. You talk a lot about the product mindset. What does that actually mean to you beyond job titles and roles? What shifts when someone starts thinking like a product person, even if they're not officially in product?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And to be very honest, it is not just a mindset that, as you said, fits under a role or under even building products in tech or startups. I think it is truly a mindset of approaching the world. And you can probably see that characteristic in a lot of people that kind of find their way into this career and what characteristics they share. And fundamentally, underpinning that role is curiosity, and curiosity, not just, being naughty or trying to intervene or interfere, but truly observing the world. So one of the things that I believe as a product person, having that mindset, you do is you observe the world, you observe how people behave, you observe where they're getting stuck, what is easy for them, how things make them feel. And then you start really tapping into the world of possibilities. And that's the next important characteristic. Some people would call you a problem solver. For me, more than anything, it is about imagining new possibilities, of thinking of different ways that things could get done. From the simplest of things, which could be in a very, very easy way, thinking, oh, how might we check out on an e commerce flow, to things that are probably revolutionary, right? Not because they're complicated, but because of the way we just fit them in to the context, to the situation, to what people are doing, to what they were used to, right? And we're actually creating a new reality for them. So when you think of that element, is you're always looking for possibilities, and technology fundamentally is giving you those tools to challenge how things are done and to reimagine new ways of getting those things done. And I think the final and most important characteristic in this product mindset is that you appreciate the value of other people, not only as the users, right, who you're serving, but more importantly, the other people in your team, because you acknowledge that not a single great idea comes from one person, right? It is that possibility of bringing all these great brains together and fostering, very powerful ideas. And that for me is, let's say, the three pillars that I think underpin the product mindset.
Yeah, that shift feels like it opens up different way of seeing problems, less about execution, more about intent.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, I often say ideas are cheap. We all have great ideas, but actually, when you do progress in your career, right, and as you go through the trenches of building things, right, and bringing them to life, I think you realize the importance of execution. And it doesn't mean that every product person, right, will have all of these qualities at the same, let's say, balanced level, but ultimately the ability to execute, the ability to motivate a team, the ability to align a team to deliver an outcome is fundamentally, something that makes something from a concept to a new reality. And of course, we will talk about tools and the role of generative AI tools and how all of these things might be making certain things easier or more approachable. But I do fundamentally believe that your ability to execute and align even a smaller team is really what makes the difference.
Yeah, and that ties into how careers are changing too. Not everyone follows a linear path anymore. Careers today seem less about fixed ladders and more about adaptability. What mindset do you think helps people not just survive change, but grow through it? Is there a story that shaped how you see this?
I have to say, through the work we've been doing in the academy, and I've seen Nicole, we've collaborated, and you've seen some of those stories yourself through engaging with some of our students. It is truly inspiring to see the path they followed. And I have to say, for me, it's also humbling and at times reminds me, of what it truly takes to persevere and persist, right? And be inspired by others. So women that have had from health challenges to accidents that have disrupted their careers, families, right? Four children, big career breaks, women that had to be forced out of their country or had to leave to educate themselves, challenges in terms of mental health or simply, being different in ways that probably constrain their options and what they could be doing. It is an incredible, I mean, I've had a lady from Nigeria, who's older than me, who came from Nigeria, and he won't believe the amount of courses she was taking to reskill herself in the digital space. So she took my course, she did all of the Google certifications. I just could not believe it. The capacity she had, the determination, the tenacity to do this at her, early 50s to reskill herself entirely. And frankly speaking, every one of these women in the academy is a reminder that, career is not only that it's not linear, right? But we probably will have many careers. And I think through every job or every career step we take, what really comes through is who we are and how we're evolving. And you can see that in those women. So the qualities they have, their innate talents, their experiences overall from previous roles, from previous journeys, right? And how they're tapping into those and bringing them into a completely different world. I've had women who, a lady who does skincare, and now she's completed UX UI design course, product management course, UX research courses, and she's now actually teaching other women how to use AI tools to prototype and how to load their prototypes into Figma. Fundamentally different careers. But what does it take? I think it takes also people who believe in you, and it takes to be part of a community where you see other people um, dealing, with the challenge of change and embracing it.
Yeah, that kind of adaptability seems especially important now when so much is in flux. And I think it's clear you've built your work around helping people reconnect with their sense of agency. It's really important.
Yeah, and I think, if you are a product person or kind of mastering this product mindset, I think adaptability is a very important muscle because in the end of the day, as you know, no day is going to be the same. No opportunity is going to be the same. No problem, if you like, will ever be the same. Capabilities of technology are changing rapidly. I mean, I finished university in 1993, and the world is so different in so many ways, and it has been changing throughout all these years. So you have to master that muscle of adaptability, and it no longer becomes a threat or something that creates fear, but rather a sense of exploration, right? An eagerness to uncover. Sometimes I say that in our job we have to flirt with the unknown. because flirting with the unknown is that concept, right? That you are in the mission of uncovering. When you run an experiment, when you do discovery, when you're launching a new product, effectively you have hypotheses or beliefs on what might happen. But ultimately, you are in the process of uncovering and piecing the information and taking the next best action. So you're fundamentally all the time, you know, in a sense, tapping into your adaptability muscle. And that's where I think, these women are demonstrating because they're taking all they've done through different careers and different education into a whole new different space where they're going to be pursuing a different career.
Let's shift to the role of tools, something you talk about as more than just things we use. We're surrounded by powerful tools, but not everyone knows how to use them well. What separates those who just use tools from those who leverage them? What do these tools reveal about someone's thinking?
Oh, I think that's a great question. We're actually running right now with the team a research project, and we had this conversation yesterday. So we're conducting discovery interviews, and we're gathering a lot of transcripts. And part of the reason we're doing it is to try to see patterns in a very systematic way and tap, our insights back into the quotes and the references of the interviews we've run. And one of the team members says, okay, why can't we just simply use auto tagging? Why can't we just simply load all of this text and ask the tool we're using, I will name it, but there's many in the category, to simply go through the transcript and assign the tags automatically. It is not necessarily a bad thing to suggest, and it doesn't mean that it wouldn't have some merit. It would definitely bring some qualities. But I said, if you were to do that, where were you in the interviews, right? What is the value you bring? And more importantly, the value is how are you interpreting, right? And classifying what you've heard and effectively teaching the algorithm with that right ability to interpret the words and the context into what they mean in the scope of our research. I said to her, if you were to do auto tagging, it means you're effectively taking yourself out of the equation, right? Your own critical thinking, your ability to interpret the person you were interviewing, and that's not purely on the context of what was said, but it was on the context of how it was said and everything you were interpreting by looking at them, right? Every signal that was transmitted. And then teaching the system, not only for you, for other team members, how we are interpreting, how we're classifying it, to then help us, of course, as we're loading more and more transcripts and we're scaling our knowledge base, right? To cover more ground. So that's a very good example. Like if somebody, I've seen people that go into ChatGPT to create business plans and go to market strategies and ask what features to build. I mean, I've been advising startups where they just go to ChatGPT and say, okay, give me features to build. There's nothing wrong with ideating, with ChatGPT or other type of tools that are, in this category. But the most important thing is what questions are you asking? And I think fundamentally, the quality of our questions is what makes the difference. And in order to have a better quality of questions, what do you need to have in place? That's where that curiosity comes in. Well, that's our ability to observe the world. That's our ability to frame, where might be something that I need to know that I don't know. What might be something that's important and will have a big impact if I was going to do this. And that is effectively what I think is that critical thinking and our ability to ourselves assess the context and frame those questions. You might call it prompts, but ultimately that's what it is. To then get high quality answers. And it's not about getting definitive answers, also in my view. It's about getting answers that helps you maybe involve the line of questioning or unveil dimensions or aspects that you might not be seeing. It's almost like talking to somebody who's helping you reflect and see your own blind spots, right? Open up directions that are important. Using it to auto tag or to simply tell you what to build.
It's almost like the tool becomes a mirror of how someone approaches complexity. And speaking of tools, you've mentioned a few you like Useberry, Wizard, and Lovable. What do you think makes a tool truly empowering for someone in a product role? Is there a tool that surprised you in how it unlocked creative thinking?
I mean, I actually ran a session with one of our graduates because she's built a product from idea to taking it to light and getting people to pay for it in less than 3 months, in less than £200. So she used a combination of um, Wizard and Lovable and Mirai, but predominantly, she actually built it and Lovable. And interestingly, we every Friday in our community we run a tool session. So we dedicate every Friday to introduce new tools. And often we do that within our own community. So one of the things I realized, especially for the women that are transitioning careers, it's not about possessing technical skills. It's not about being able to write code. It is about being able to articulate, right? With clarity and with a level of appreciation of what the users are, what the situation is, what are the key concepts of what they want to build, why that's important, what kind of outcomes it will bring. And when they start doing it, as you understand, they're bringing to life an application without actually knowing how to write code. They understand how code is structured, and obviously, Lovable, for instance, has evolved quite a bit in bringing this barrier down. But even when we started using it, which was very early on, when Lovable was launched, you could see that these women were able to actually build product enough, tapping into their strength and not limited by the constraint of not being a developer. Now, whether, of course, whether this product would scale, that's another matter, right? But already you're seeing that even code written on Lovable, for example, has more potential to be something beyond an MVP, right? And it could actually possibly scale. But for me, it's not something I've read about or experimented myself. It's something I've seen because other women have certainly done it.
Yeah, it's always interesting when a tool doesn't just make things faster. It actually could help you think differently.
Yeah, and I think, also Useberry, right? It's one of those tools we've been using extensively. And in fact, one of the things that, if you remember, Nicole, we did very early on is not just use it to test Figma wireframes. We've been testing, as you know, early MVPs that we built on Lovable and also things we've been doing on Wizard. So for me, from the very beginning, it was all about bringing that phase of bringing an idea to life much faster. Uh, and it's not about using Figma or not, but actually, it's, again, the barrier, right? So now we can prototype without necessarily knowing the mechanics of Figma or having to drill into the layers of that prototyping and focus on, the concept, the what it is, communicating in a language that the product person, right, can focus on versus getting diluted on the building of a prototype and the amount of time it would probably take. And that's another thing that would seem extremely valuable with Useberry because you really bring your idea to life in front of people very, very quickly. So even if you're going to use this iteration, the learnings are significant and you can take them on to whatever you're launching.
If you've ever felt stuck with a confusing or low quality research submission, we get it. That's why we've upgraded Useberry's participant pool so you can review each submission, return ones that don't meet your standards, and message participants directly for clarification. Built for more transparency, more control, and even better results. Check it out at useberry.com. We're in a time where there's more content, more advice, and more templates than ever, but also more confusion. What skills matter most right now when information is everywhere?
Yes, and I think this cognitive overload is so significant. And I think we are exacerbating the problem. When we generate content with generative AI that is not actually primed and lacks context and lacks, let's say, authentic origins. We're just overwhelming ourselves and others with things that don't necessarily carry significant signal. So I personally think that, the principle of critical thinking and questioning is fundamental. Of course, obviously the sources that we follow, the people that we read from, how we approach getting informed is very significant as well, like the choices we're making, but also the way we approach information and how we question things is critical in this time. And, in the end of the day, I think it goes back to the fundamentals. So, for instance, in this thinking of understanding users, for me, at the end of the day, believe it or not, it all boils down to your ability to listen, your ability to follow people in their, um, let's say, in their wavelength, in their own story, your ability to suspend your own bias and allow yourself to ask questions that really follow the person you're interviewing, and your ability to see patterns, right? Your ability to see how data's connecting among all the people you're talking to. So, you can have no tools, you can have no, let's say, digitized elements in how you would be doing this. But if you have those qualities and those abilities, you probably have 160% of the game in understanding your users. Whereas if you have all the tools, all the algorithms, all the capabilities, but you can't be there in the moment and really listen and follow the person you're interviewing or observing and tune into their world for half an hour, guess what happens? You just sit there for half an hour, but you simply weren't there. Somebody was talking to you, but you were not actually listening. So no matter what they do, no matter what their behaviors are, no matter what they're struggling with, you've come in and left, but nothing changed. And I think that's also part, and we see, with a lot of startups and product people, like your ability to tune in to whoever that audience is that you're serving is such a big and fundamental capability. It is what I call if you have the number 1 million and you take the number one, all you're left with is zeros. But sometimes that very simple thing is the hardest thing to do. And and so for me, I take away all of the templates and all of the complicated things and always ask that fundamental question. As a human to human, first and foremost, are you really present and are you really listening? Or are you just doing whatever you do to confirm what you believe to be true?
Yeah, that ability to filter signal from noise feels like could be a differentiator today. Important.
And I don't think it's as easy as we believe it. I really think that the more you observe how, yourself, how we communicate, if you observe how we respond to each other, I think fundamentally that's one of the areas where we assume we're very good at. But actually, that's where we start building a whole, how to say, big building, very frail foundations. So for me, reflection is very important. I personally, for example, go back to a lot of the interviews I do or sessions to observe myself. In fact, that's where I've gained most of my skill was through reflection and observation of myself. And I also tell to a lot of the people I work with is when you're conducting interviews and you do record them, don't record them only to see how the person you were interviewing was responding, but more importantly, observe yourself and how would you do something differently? How many times do you lead somebody into an answer? How many times are you actually boxing people in? How many times somebody important is being said, but you didn't quite get it at the moment, right? Or even interpret it in a very different way. So again, what are all these skills? Very fundamental skills, right? But do you see what kind of realities we can create if we don't understand ourselves and how we get about everybody else? We interpret the world.
And that brings us to a concept you often talk about, being a gap finder. Can you unpack the gap finder mindset? What does it mean to look for blind spots, and how does that skill show up in a great product work?
Yeah, I think actually there's in the UK even a TV show and a radio show called The Gap Finder. So I think, and they highlight different entrepreneurs and people that have built great products, uncovered solutions. And I think, if you look about the qualities we discussed about being curious, right? And observing the world, about approaching technology and its capabilities as a tool to create new realities and solve problems in different ways. These are definitely for me the key and important skills. And I believe it doesn't have to do with having technical merit. For many times, I thought that being a great engineer is what it really takes. In fact, I've seen a lot of great engineers who are obviously building great stuff, but actually lack that ability to connect the dots. Whereas you see people that don't have an engineering background and sometimes have come from social sciences or psychology or literature, right? And for the strangest of all reasons, they're able to just spot those things and then talk with engineers or expose themselves to capabilities and come up with really good ideas, right? That have potential, that really, have legs. And so I think it all comes back to our ability to observe the world and not do it just to prove that we're right. It's truly do it to see how whatever we're going to bring to life could really change the reality of the people that we want to be serving through our product. And how do you build that muscle, right? How do you become a gap finder? How do you approach the world with this mindset? I believe it's something you can learn. It's something you can practice. But I do also believe that there are people that are just gifted. And I also think there is a part of intuition involved in this. So it is, in a way, an ability to explore and understand the world intuitively, not only through the data, the words, the numbers, the evidence that you're seeing, but your ability to synthesize it and interpret it through your own intuition, right? Through your own ability to comprehend the world. And I'm sure you can appreciate, Nicole, that there are some talented innovators that have talked about the role of their own intuition in making decisions or sensing, right? Through the data, but through their own interpretation of where those opportunities might be.
It reminds me of the kind of insight that doesn't show up on roadmaps, but they do end up driving the most valuable insights at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, also when you look at roadmaps, I had a boss who used to always shout at me, a roadmap is not a laundry list of things to get done. There has to be something in there, effectively, a product vision, right? That really
Exactly.
stems very, very profoundly into that deep understanding. And I think that how it articulates into features and how you play around and experiment with ideas is where you have that freedom. But ultimately, if you're really connected with that audience, with that reality you want to create, with what you're exploring at the art of possible, it becomes a whole new different game. And yes, I do think that sometimes roadmaps are the one thing that kills any creativity or any innovation. I mean, of course, you can have roadmaps that are tactical, every product depending on the stage that it's at, and have a collection of things that have relevance, have value. There are more tactical things I need to do, but um, oftentimes we just remove our ability ourselves to find solutions that have merit because we box ourselves in. In fact, I was discussing with the group we're working right now, and I said one of the questions I used to ask business customers when they came up with a requirement. So I had a lot of business customers in B2B product I was working at. And they would like come with this requirement, we need to build this feature and all of that. So I said, okay, assume it's done. We've built it. You come to the office. What's different? Describe to me. Okay, is it different for you? Who are these people that are experiencing a new reality? What does it mean for them? What do they do? How do you measure it? What are they feeling? What are they doing? So I had to really bring them to a situation where they had to articulate what was different if that thing was built. And as you understand, most of the times we never ended up building what they've asked for because there were so many different ways to actually get to that outcome. You see, and for me, it was just the power of one question. Describe to me, once we've built it, assume it's there, what's happening? And that questioning, you see, the quality of that question opened up a whole new different conversation. So all of my product team, I kind of coach them, it's not about debating the feature and specifics and why they're saying this or we can't do this, going into this kind of battle mode, but shifting the conversation entirely and of course building a whole new different relationship with your customer because suddenly you're listening to them and you're actually trying to sense what it is that they're striving to achieve, but not just do it purely on numbers, right, or one metric. You actually invite them to describe it in context and obviously how they would measure it. So you see how much richer picture, and you can see in their face like the relief at times, like because they're imagining, oh my God, this wouldn't be happening anymore. So as they're describing, they're living it. And also their current frustration of finally, we won't have to be doing this. We're relieved. And that's the beauty of this job, right? In the end of the day, what we're building, either it's targeted to business users or individual customers, right? It is about delighting the user. It is about creating realities that relieve them and make things easier for them.
I'd love to bring it back to something fundamental, turning ideas into momentum. Mindset and tools are powerful, but at some point, ideas have to ship. What do you think separates someone with great ideas from someone who makes real impact?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. It's what would you call the ability to execute? Um, and to be fair, I think ability to execute is not um, something we should take for granted. Neither should we assume that everybody has the stamina and the capability to execute. And sometimes it's not about starting something; it's about being able to seeing it through. And in fair honesty, right, people that are great innovators, right, don't necessarily, as you know, execute themselves, right? They have other people, other teams, because oftentimes these two skills are not necessarily finding the same person. So there are people that are great at capturing problems, are finding, what needs to be done, are good at maybe bringing it to a point, and then they need to move on. Naturally, they're bored, right? Their strength lies in just doing that, and they're not the people that would actually see it through. And then there are other people that, have more of a capability of taking these early stages, right? And prototyping it and have the stamina to see it through. And then you have these incredible beings that I find, combine these two things that are able to have great ideas, but also see them through. So I think you need to know who you are first and foremost, because you can't operate out of your own zone of excellence or zone of genius, even better, right? So you need to know who you are. And if you can't be that person that will see it through, you need to have members in your team or complement yourself, right? If you're a founder, have a co-founder that's complementing you. If you're in a productive, position yourself with your team, right? To be able to have that rounded whole. And if you're lucky enough to be that person that can see things through up to a point, um, again, I think nurture other people because you very quickly will need to positively pivot, right? Or focus on growth or focus on expansion. So, in essence, knowing yourself, knowing where your strengths are, and I think being able to find people and bring them into your team that will complement you is really important. For me, I'll be very honest that there are certain things that I like to see happen that I want to execute. So I make deliberate choices on the things I'm not going to do. And there are a few things that I choose to do. And believe it or not, there might be my own ideas, but I want to see them through. Like I really passionately want to bring them to the point where they come to life. And at that point, maybe I'll pass it on to someone else. But I do find incredible joy and satisfaction in picking few things and seeing them through.
Yeah, that distinction between energy and follow through is something so many teams wrestle with these days.
I do believe it all starts with understanding yourself. I know it sounds very simple and very takes away from tools and templates and but if you can't really appreciate yourself and where you're operating well, um, then everything else is going to be a challenge. So when we start the cohort in Kimolian Academy, the very first thing I ask people to do, believe it or not, is to fill into templates. The first one is something about themselves, so they have to describe their superpower. You get the best out of me when, you get the worst out of me when, you can rely on me when you need this, I need your help. So that's the first card they need to fill in. So it's about themselves. And then as a team, they create another card where they talk about their collective superpowers. What are the collective skills? What are the resources that each person brings in? And where are the areas where they have to get help, and then they have an identity as a team, and then they present it to the entire group. So why is that something I do before we do anything else? Because fundamentally, right, their success is going to be predetermined by their ability to understand themselves in the context of that team and understand how to operate as a team. And that's something I've seen so many times in my career. In fact, very often you can tell which direction things are headed, regardless of what the product is, the opportunity space, the market, by observing the team. Because a team that really hasn't unlocked its ability to work as a whole and complement each other, uh, most likely will lose momentum. To your point, will end up in introvert mode, consumed by its own dysfunctions, versus staying tuned to what matters and getting fitting in and pivoting, right, and adapting, even in the worst of circumstances. And so, if you think about it, the health of yourself in a team and your ability to see your team, something you belong in and you really tune in, is such an important dimension, and it really gets the best out of you. And the job we do, right, is creative, right? It is new challenges every day. We need to problem solve. We need to be in a great state of mind to think through things, calmly, with an ability to deal with whatever deadlines and stress we have, but really getting the best out of ourselves and getting the best out of each other. And that is not something that you can achieve unless you are intentional about
To close, let's zoom out for a moment. Looking back at your own path, what's a belief, mindset, or lesson that stuck with you and shaped the way you teach, build, or lead today? Not a tip or trend, but something deeper that still guides you.
it. There are certain things in your life and your career that will shape you fundamentally and will change the way you see yourself and the way you see everyone else around you. And for me, I do believe that there are people in our career that really lift us up and can have an impact of really allowing us to see ourselves in our full potential and even exceed what we believe is possible. And there are other circumstances where we're actually shrinking, right? And we can't even remotely see what used to be easy for us to do. So my approach in what I do and my approach for myself is to believe in people and not do it because I think they're perfect or that they know it all or that they have every talent, but to find in everyone, including myself, what are those qualities that are unique? What are those qualities that are valuable? And how can I tap into those to really multiply them, to create value for myself and everyone else around me? And I think there are people that are gifted that can truly, believe in you. And by doing that, help you become the best version of yourself. And that's something that I want to be doing for others. That's something that I want to see more people doing within their teams, as leaders, as managers, as product people. We have such an impact on each other. Sometimes we don't even realize the impact we have. So being very mindful of our own ability to influence, not just ourselves, but everyone we interact with. And frankly speaking, even if you're a product owner or a product manager in a very small team, just that alone, the impact you're going to have, the influence you're going to have in that very small team and how that team will be shaped by your leadership is so much more important than you think it is. And people will remember you, right? So setting that intention, making yourself somebody that inspires others and lifts them up and gets them to see what they're capable of is for me the biggest learning in my career.
It's clear that mindfulness shows up in everything you do and how you walk this world.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes the way you learn, as you know, is not only when things go well. I think for me, what I've seen has the greatest value in the course that I run. It's not talking about the things that work. In fact, it's about reflecting on the things that didn't work. And it doesn't mean that they were failures, right? Or it was a catastrophe. But I'll be very honest, for me, the biggest advancement in my career was when I went back and revisited things that didn't quite work as I expected. And I actually studied and observed and researched and went out to find tools and ways of working and understood like what could we have done differently. And I'm not just talking about the mechanics of things or how. But everything from how I showed up to how I led my team to how I created the environment for my team, the biggest breakthroughs for me by far was my ability to just go back and revisit every time something that wasn't that easy. And obviously, when things work well, also observe, what happened? Why did this feel easy? Why did it materialize the way it did? And if you do that consistently, right, all of your life and career experiences, what do they become? They become your own product. You're actually evolving yourself, applying that same product mindset. And you're not only doubling down on your strengths, but actually you're starting to soften, right? Or better understand the things that you're not naturally good at, or your weaknesses are, right? Because that is what humans are. We are all humans. So we have to appreciate what we enjoy, where we perform our best, what are our constraints, I often will say, when I do too many things, I tend to make mistakes. And I'm very aware that after a certain point in time on the day or after an amount of tasks, I stop because I know that I'll start making mistakes. Or if I do make a mistake in a document, I'll say, oh, I was clearly writing it when I was tired. So knowing yourself and really managing yourself and really appreciating how you can constantly improve. And obviously, as I said, when you're in a team and the ways of working, it's such a big game changer when you have that ability to do, an honest reflection. And I know we do it in Scrum and we call it retrospective. I believe no team really realizes the importance of having honest retrospectives.
Eleni, thank you for this conversation. You've given us a lot to think about, not just about as builders, let's say, or creators, but as learners and leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole.
We'll drop links to the show notes, to Kimolian Academy, and ways to connect with Eleni. Thanks to everyone for listening to If You Seek. See you next time. For more exciting content, follow us on our social channels. Your reviews mean the world to us, so don't forget to leave one. And of course, hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our latest episodes. If You Seek is a platform for discussions and personal insights. The opinions presented by guests are independent and do not represent the official position of the host, Reduceberry, or our sponsors.